All right, welcome back to edition 114 of the Bebo Knows podcast. This is your host, Brian Bullock, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you. This is the college basketball edition, and we have Audacity of Hoops on for the first time. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Hoops.
Hey, Brian. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining, and a cheers to everybody out there in Twitter land. I know you. Normally, we've been talking a lot of beer lately, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But since I have the day off, you don't really have the pleasure of drinking right now.
Yeah, it's a little early. It's still morning over here.
Yeah. So, all right. So, as I do with any new podcast guest, a little introduction of yourself from a betting perspective. Any memorable betting moments, what got you into betting, how you got tied up in Twitter, your gambling strengths, however you care to introduce yourself from a betting perspective.
Sure. I think actually I'm probably more of a college basketball enthusiast and prediction enthusiast than betting. I do bet. Mostly I bet college basketball totals, money lines, futures. Same thing for NFL. Some of it is TR picks, some of it is my own analysis. I do lots of pools. I enjoy those more than individual game betting. Just kind of the game theory aspect of it is fun, and I feel like
Sure.
I'm better at leveraging that stuff than it's a little bit easier, I think, than betting against markets, right? You're betting against other people that probably aren't doing the same level of game theory analysis that you are. So I really enjoy doing those. All the football stuff, Survivor, Pick'em, that kind of thing. But my favorite thing I think is not happening this year is the college basketball season long pool. Are you familiar with that?
Is that something that somebody on Twitter runs?
Yeah, I guess. I guess some listeners probably aren't anyway. So it's a thing where you basically have a certain amount of money that you have to spend on picking about 10 teams.
Oh,
and
yeah. And you have a budget, right?
And then you get points if they win their regular season.
Got it.
Conference and conference tournament, NCAA tournament wins and stuff. So I like doing stuff like that where you take predictions and then you have to fit them into a different framework. So there's some analysis where, taking the predictions and actually figuring out how to leverage them the right way and budget them and everything, I think is fun. But yeah, how I got into this stuff is probably, it probably started with when I was 11 or 12 years old, winning my dad's bracket pool contest.
Sure.
He let me enter, and I realized, you can actually win money with sports. This is awesome. So, I didn't really get super into betting at that time, but sort of more into predictions and stuff.
Okay.
Now,
before sorry to interrupt, but was it a thing where you were really good at it, and then your parents just said, when they did their work pools, they just gave it to you and you filled it out?
Oh no, I'm sure it was complete luck. I don't remember at this point what it was. I wasn't sitting there with power ratings and filling it out. I like Wisconsin Green Bay. That sounds cool.
Your Q basic. You didn't develop a Q basic program or anything like that.
Yeah, not at that point.
Sorry to interrupt. So you were saying you were.
Oh yeah, just what was I saying? That's when I got probably a little more interested in betting. I've gotten a lot more into it since I started working for Team Rankings, which makes sense. But I was pretty into college basketball analysis before that. I was just doing it for fun. I found Ken Palm when it was pretty early and not a lot of people knew about it, and won some pools just by using those ratings straight up to predict stuff. And then I started my own blog so that I could post some analysis that I was doing that sort of involved his stuff. And then while I was doing that, I think Vegas Watch actually shared some. It was a word cloud post that I did. I like took it was a preseason post where I took I did a bunch of Google searches for like every player's name on all of the top 25 teams or
Okay.
something like that, and then like made a word cloud based on how many hits I got for each player, so it would
Hmm.
show like which players were most important to the team. Anyway, Vegas Watch um, shared that on Twitter, and then that got it was a little bit viral. It's not like it got 100,000 views or something, but
Yeah.
it got me. I connected with some like a guy that worked at MSNBC Sports and a couple of media places, and I did some freelancing after that got attention, and
Okay.
I ended up was doing some guest writing for team rankings, and I got laid off from my other job while I was doing that. I mentioned it casually to Tom, the CEO, and he's like, "Do you want to work for TR?" I'm like, "Sure." Okay,
Okay.
so that's and then once I was there, I mean, I obviously now that my job involves predictions, I am thinking about it like all the time, basically.
Okay. So if you don't mind me asking, is this a full time gig then at Team Rankings or?
Yeah,
Okay. Cool.
yeah, I've been full time there for over 9 years now.
Oh, nice.
So yeah,
Okay.
it's the longest job I've ever had.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that tops me for sure. So we'll transition into that. So, what's give a brief synopsis of the site for those who might not be familiar with it and your role with it.
Yeah. So team rankings, it started just as a team rankings site, as you might guess from the name. Mike Greenfield started it in his dorm in Stanford back like 20 years ago or something. So it was called the Greenfield rankings. I used to use them when they were called the Greenfield rankings, and
Okay.
now anyway, that branding is gone a long time ago. But anyway, the site is it's got some free stuff that's like stats, ratings, projections for college basketball, NBA, NFL, college football, Major League Baseball. So we do, like I said, power ratings, stats, projections. There's some betting picks for each of those. There's we do office pool picks, so NFL survivor pools and NFL and college football pick'em pools and college basketball NCAA tournament pools. We offer custom picks for your pools. You tell us a little bit about your pool, what the rules are, how the scoring system works, what the payout structure is, and then we provide custom picks that are, they change based on the rules of your pool, right? So if it's a NCAA tournament pool that rewards upsets, you're going to get a bracket with more upsets in it,
Sure.
that type of thing. So that's, I mean, the way the site makes money is basically through the betting picks, and then we have a contract with ESPN to provide some data and tools for them. So
Okay.
if you use the ESPN NCAA tournament, if you enter NCAA tournament pool on their site, there's like some insider features that we run, like
Okay.
a matchup tool that lets you compare teams and stuff like that.
So to go off on the betting part, have you found that at least based on your interactions with people on Twitter that that your numbers and your percentages are like usually pretty close to what the actual market is? Like you're not talking about like 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 huge head scratching edges like that you know
Right, like the Odd Shark ratings that
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about, where it's
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
Coastal Carolina favored by 20 over North Carolina.
yeah.
No, yeah, our stuff is we use the market information in the models. We regress stuff towards the market, so we design it so it can't be super far off of the market, because it's clearly, if you're that far off, like it's probably wrong, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, we actually get complaints from people that see the predictions. They're like, how come you never have any like locks that are like 80% to win? And we're like, well, because
It's
we don't. There aren't
that's
any. Like,
no.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you could get it, I don't know how much of the secret sauce you can actually reveal. So maybe you have to speak in generalities with some of these things. But actually, what actually goes into your rankings?
Well, oh, actually, I forgot. We didn't really touch on what I do for
Oh, I'm
TR.
sorry.
If
Yeah,
you want
yeah.
to, yeah, that's okay.
Let's yeah. If you want to touch base on that first, yeah.
Just real quick, I thought I'd
Sure.
mention it. Yeah.
Sure.
So the whole site is there's only two programmers. It's me and John Myers. So I do most of the. I basically do the backend stuff, database and PHP scripts, and I manage all the predictive modeling and the Office Pool products and stuff. And then John is more front end, and he's been doing some like marketing related stuff and partner offer stuff and that kind of thing. But I started at TR just writing blog posts and then sort of learned a lot of the code on the job, and now doing it's like a anyway, it's a two-man operation. That's a pretty big site. I just wanted to mention that and shout out
Sure.
John some there. So
So
yeah, so you're saying what
oh
what goes
yeah, oh
into the
yeah.
preseason rating?
What goes into the rankings? I mean, I know you can't go into like there's probably some proprietary stuff, but I don't if there's or if there's
Oh
not
no,
a
I mean we have a post on the blog that tries to go into a lot of detail actually, which was pretty fun to write. There's nothing in there that's I mean we don't post the regression values or whatever,
sure.
but yeah, we're happy to share whatever. So the preseason rankings are basically, I think it's a pretty standard concept. You take some historical data, fit a regression model, and you that gets you your ratings, like right. So, but the actual factors in it, I mean, there's last year's rating is really important. Like if you look at the correlation of last year to this year's rating, it's something like 0.85 or zero point 0.9 or something. It's really high.
Okay.
Obviously, that's the standard one. Um, I think one of the core things is returning production. So we calculate offensive rating based on Dean Oliver's formula and usage, and then basically tally up for every team a total production value of all the players, see who's returning, and use some of that information like percent of returning offense. Do the same thing for defense, percent of returning defense, percent of the returning production that's from freshmen, because freshmen tend to make bigger jumps than the other classes. There's if players are drafted, there's a high in the draft, like lottery picks or something, there's a penalty for that because generally they're probably a little bit better than the raw numbers would have indicated. There's recruiting class information, so we take the RSCI consensus data, and we fit a model based on historical data that tells you, the number one pick is usually worth 2 points or whatever. Not number one pick, the number one recruit. Number two recruit is worth like 1.7. Anyway,
Okay.
it's a curve. It's a pretty steep drop off after the first 5 or 10 people. You're not getting a big expected bonus from them.
Okay.
Anyway, so we use that curve that we fit to make class ratings for every team,
Okay.
and then use the class ratings in the model. There's a transfer info. We handle that kind of in an interesting way, I think. So we basically do a two-stage model. First, we have a model that ignores the transfer stuff and just uses the other things I mentioned there, the returning information and how they did last year, and produces a initial rating. And then we have another regression that uses the initial rating and some transfer production info to create the final rating. But that second stage model, basically, the better the initial prediction is for a team, the lower value the transfers have. So
Okay.
essentially, if you're a terrible team, like the same player going to a terrible team is going to give them an average player going to a terrible team is going to give them a boost. An average player going to a top team is not going to be worth anything, right?
Sure.
So that's how we account for different team strengths. So it's a lot harder for a transfer to contribute to a top team. So I actually got a question about that on Twitter. I think it was Michigan State has a Hauser brother transferring to them. Is that right? Someone has a Hauser brother transferring to them, but it was the worst the less valuable Hauser, and he was like, "Why doesn't Michigan State have a transfer, bonus?" Because we list all the components in our preseason rating post, so you can see where the value is coming from.
Okay.
And it basically just like, I mean, that guy was solid, but he's going to a good team, so it's a similar deal with Gonzaga. I forgot his name, Anyway, the Florida guard that just became eligible for Gonzaga is only a little bit of a boost in our rating, and I don't know if we really handle that ideally. Like, I'm sure our model's not perfect. I think he was a bigger boost for Torvik and Pomeroy. I noticed Gonzaga went up from like number 4 to number 1, and Torvik and Pomeroy, they went from 2 to 1. Maybe I have that reversed. Anyway, okay. Gonzaga's number 1 everywhere now, and it looked like they went up by about 1 to 1.5 points if you convert their ratings into like a
point spread,
points per game.
Sure.
Yeah, point spread. And I think for us it was more like a 0.5 point. So it's just, the transfer thing is handled a little bit differently than some places. And then we do at the end, I go through and I look at all the coaching changes that happened, try to just put in a manual fudge for those. Like Iona's going to get a little bit of a boost this year because Rick Pitino's there, right?
Sure.
I can't remember exactly who got the boosts, but generally those are on the order of a couple of points. Nate Oates, although that was last year. Yeah, Nate Oates leaving Buffalo was like our biggest downward adjustment. I don't remember what it was this year, but I can look at the notes in a bit.
Okay.
We look at, what's the other thing? I'm missing one component, I think. Well, at the end, I take our ratings after all this stuff, and then I look at market data. So I find, futures odds for teams to win the title, and then there's some conference title odds, and I go through and for every conference, I see where we're off from the market, and I investigate those teams and make a call on whether there's something that we're not picking up that we need to fudge the number for, or we just say, the market's wrong. Like for conference tournament, I mean, for college basketball conference title odds at this point in the season on like DraftKings or whatever, that's not like NFL sides where it's a really efficient number. Like, there's some that I think are just off, and we're fine being off from them.
And I've noticed too, it seems to happen every year. Maybe it's because of just how many actual conferences there are, but there seem to be so many conferences where a team's projected to be in the bottom 2 or 3, and they end up winning the whole thing, like, with a, relatively easily, comparatively speaking.
Some of the smaller conferences.
Yeah, like, it seems like it would be, I never bet those, but I imagine that the limits on those aren't probably very high, because I would imagine that they could probably get picked off pretty easily by people who actually study those conferences, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I actually don't bet them either, because they've never been available at books where I have money. I don't have a ton of different books where I have money in. Yeah. So
okay.
I do bet conference tournament odds at the end of the season, but that's you're tying your money up for 1 week instead of 4 months or whatever. So
and that's something to consider too when you're
I think for those for the conference this the preseason conference winner odds, you probably just as well off just betting the team on the money line a bunch during the season or something like that
Yeah.
instead of, I mean, not rolling it over, but just same
And
size bet
and
or something.
and we'll get into this shortly, but like just, hey kitty.
Okay, he doesn't want to be here.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say we don't. Yeah, with the current landscape of the pandemic, I couldn't imagine that you feel too comfortable leaving money tied up in those markets anyways when it could just end up getting canceled. Who knows? You never know.
Yeah, and even aside from tying it up, I feel like there could be schedule issues with the conferences that some team gets 2 easy games canceled or something, and then they drop in the standings because of that. I don't know. There's just a lot of uncertainty with that stuff. Where
Sure.
I'm not betting any futures this year because I have no idea how. Like maybe the NCAA tournament's not even going to be the same format. We don't know at this point.
Yeah. So with the independent of the pandemic, when you're doing these rankings and numbers, both for the preseason and just like game to game, what do you consider the toughest aspects to model? Or maybe like things that you're still working on that you still haven't figured out that you're like, I'm going to get this resolved in the next like 3 years or 5 years or I don't know.
I think it's got to be player absences, which has been, a little bit more of an issue this year with COVID in the NFL. Though not that big. I mean, it's not like it's dwarfing injuries. There are already plenty of people out with injuries, but yeah, I mean, we don't automate injury analysis. It's a super difficult thing, I think, to automate. Part of it is just getting data for college basketball. I mean, it's not like the NFL where there's a set every day they announce like these guys are these particular statuses. There's not as good of data, not as clean a data for college basketball. So what we end up doing, well, actually, so that's one of the things that I enjoy about the NCAA tournament is I take a couple of days and I go through and it's just analysis of every team. I look at game logs, and I built this tool that I use where I have the game log. It shows every player's minutes and whether they were a starter, and then it also has the performance of the team, and I can like see, oh, this player missed like 3 games in February. I can click those games in my tool, and then it recalculates the rating without those games. And it's not just averaging the performance; it like regresses it towards the preseason rating, the appropriate amount based on the number of games that are remaining, whatever. Okay. So I do that kind of analysis during the NCAA tournament, and I think it makes a huge difference in the ratings. Like raw ratings, obviously, like if you think about it at all, miss a lot. I mean, if you don't adjust for injuries, you're just missing a lot of information, and it's very difficult to adjust for injuries. So that's the big thing. There's some stuff that's not injury related that I do similar things for. Like Oregon a couple years ago, they switched their starting lineup in like late January or early February or something, and then all of a sudden they became like awesome defensively. And so full season rating doesn't really pick up on that switch. So I just like made a new rating without the first half of the season and regressed that a little bit stronger because it was half the games, and they ended up, I had them as like a top 10 team, but the raw ratings are probably 30 or something. Right?
So
I think that's definitely the.
So like in a situation like that, is it? Are there like just red flags raised where you see like a big change in like how they play, and you're like, wait, I have to adjust because of this X and Y change, or is it just how does that work? How does that process work?
Well, for college, basically, we just do it at NCAA tournament time, and I just scrub every single team. I look in detail at the whole season, and every player absence I try to account for, and it's not really an alert thing. We've talked about trying to automate it for the rest of the season, and it would be something like that, either fully automated based on some kind of if a player misses a game and the game is like significantly different from the rest of the distribution of game scores or something, drop it or lower the weight.
Sure.
But we have not managed to actually do it in a way that improves the predictions. It's pretty tough to automate it. For the NFL, I do it every week, just because there's only 17 weeks, right? College basketball, I can't be doing this every single. I mean, I think there are people that do, and that's how they get their edge in betting.
Yeah.
But I do not do that right now. I do it some during conference tournament time, before I make my futures bets, and then we do it for the site for the NCAA tournament, and we do it for every week of the NFL season. I go through and it's less detailed than that, but I try to figure out what the market thinks the players that are missing are worth, and adjust our ratings some for that.
Okay.
At least the ratings that we use in the tools. The site ratings, we just publish the raw ratings on the site, in the free section of the site.
Okay. Okay. So let's go into the pandemic portion of the outline in terms of how this crazy season is affecting you and other modelers alike. So, in terms of your approach to this year, how different is it? Like how are you preparing for I'm saying, how are you preparing for all the unknowns? It sounds kind of like an oxymoron because you don't really know all of the unknowns, but some of the unknowns can be expected, like canceled games. I mean, but then again, you don't know which games are going to be canceled, like you said. So, how are you approaching this year any differently, if at all, than previous years?
Yeah. Really, there's not that much of a difference, because at least for individual games, like if they get canceled, they get canceled, and you just you don't need to worry about it. And if a player is missing, it's just kind of similar to an injury.
Okay.
For our ratings, we have a lower home field advantage because there's not going to be. I mean, it varies by school, I think, but it's not going to be full stadiums or arenas packed with people, right? So there's a lower home field advantage, though. There is still a home field advantage. I mean, home field advantage is not just the fans, right? The travel is important. Time zones affecting your body, and I think there's a familiarity component to it. If you played in so Jason Lisk did some interesting analysis for our site that he wrote a blog about, where if you look at the NFL, for division rivals that are near each other and play outdoors, so they have you're not going from dome to the cold weather, or cold weather outside or whatever, so the climate is the same, they're near each other, and they play each other a lot, the home field advantage is almost zero. It's not very much at all. But those are games with super intense fans, right? They're division rivals, and the fans are super psyched.
Yeah.
So, I mean, fans, they definitely can't be driving most of home field advantage if there is not very much home field advantage in the games where there's the most intense fans. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't have the answer to how much it's worth, but we lowered our home field advantage by about half for this college basketball season, and we'll reevaluate, after a month and see how it's going.
Okay. Okay.
But
Yeah.
that's the main thing with the ratings is home field advantage. What were you going to say?
Yeah, because actually, I was going to say that's one of the questions that Rayla Stan had about why you opted to cut home court advantage, but in half, but not to zero. And I think you kind of touch base on that a little bit there with then. And plus, I think, and I don't know how this is baked into the numbers, but like, in any sport, I think there's a home court or home field advantage just based on the referees, and not necessarily like them like rigging the game, but like the human the the human aspect of it, where they're more likely to just give a favorable call to a home team.
Yeah, but I mean, I think
I don't
there's
know.
some.
I don't know
Some
if there's
people
any.
think
I don't know
that
if there's any. I don't know if there. I feel like that I've heard that before, but I don't know if that's actually been proven or not.
Yeah, there's been a lot of data published on how refereeing is different for the home team, but I, I think there's an open question of how much of that is because the fans are there screaming at the refs, right? Like if it's an empty stadium, are they still going to get same
Yeah.
calls? And I guess we have some, there should be data on that now for this NFL and college season, but I have not looked at it to see, you know, whether the reffing trends have changed or not.
Okay. Okay. So as far as any particular likes or dislikes and how the NCAA or perhaps any particular conferences are handling this season, because I know there's a lot of unique scenarios where they're trying to be creative and like some conferences are scheduling like mini series. Some conferences are banning out of conference play altogether. Is there anything that they're doing that you're like giving a thumbs up to or a big thumbs down to? I mean, I guess a big thumbs down could be like maybe you believe they shouldn't be playing at all, which some people probably would think that, but independent of that, like, is there anything that you are liking or disliking about how certain conferences or NCAA is handling it as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think those schedules where they're doing back to backs at one location is good. Like, um, I I feel like travel and being together in the locker room and stuff is probably more of an issue than the game itself. So batching up the travel so you're not traveling as much and you're staying at the same place for a couple games makes a lot of sense to me. And the Patriot League is doing that thing where they're in like little pods, so they're only
Yeah,
playing a couple of teams a whole lot, like 6 games against the same team this season, and I think that makes sense. One thing I don't like, which is not safety related, is the Big South basketball standings.
oh yeah,
Did you heard that?
yeah,
Where
yeah.
they're doing it where like the standings is not just going to be sorted by, or the seeding isn't going to be determined by win percentage. It's like 75% win percentage and 25% the fraction of scheduled games that you end up playing. So, as someone who maintains protection code and needs to account for that, I'm like, yeah. But I mean, I did see someone point out that it actually could incentivize them to take better precautions. So it's probably really a good thing to have that there. I don't know how much incentive it will really be. I don't know if the college kids are going to be like, well, I'm not going to go to this party tonight because we might lose a game in the standings, and you know, we'll see.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if maybe I'm not paying it like maybe I'm not paying close enough attention to NFL versus college. I feel like a lot more college games have been canceled recently, and I don't know if it's because college has a little more strict guidelines in terms of what constitutes a game that can be played versus it has to be canceled. Because I know that Dabo was throwing a shit fit about the Clemson Florida State game being canceled, but that was called off by medical personnel, and I don't know. Is it the same for college hoops as well? Is it kind of the same, or is that like on a conference by conference basis? Do you know?
Yeah, it varies by team and or by conference, and I think also by teams because
Okay.
different states can have different laws about. I think state
Oh yeah, the
schools are
state. Yeah, the
subject to
state thing
some.
makes sense. Yeah.
California is more strict about some stuff than other states, and yeah, it seems like they're doing they're being super strict in college basketball. It seems like 14-day quarantines if one player tests positive. So the schedule is going to be completely wrecked. I mean, I don't know how we're gonna finish it. I mean, we'll finish a season, but it's just gonna be a lot of canceled games. Yeah, the NFL. I mean, they haven't barely canceled anything, or they haven't canceled any. They moved a couple of them, I guess. And yeah, the college football ones that have been canceled, I think there's quite a few positive tests in most of those. They like canceling games because they don't have enough linemen or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the NFL's done a great job keeping cases down, but I assume it's just they don't have to deal with college kids. These guys have like $1 million incentives to actually isolate, and the teams, I'm sure, have more, financial capacity to, I don't know, put in
Police.
place
Police
different
them.
procedures, monitor
Yeah.
them, and police them,
Yeah.
and college basketball does not have that, and I expect it to be like college football. There's going to be a ton of cancellations.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird. I think when it comes tournament time, and you're gonna see like some team who's played like 13 games against somebody who's played like 22, and you're like,
Yeah, that's actually it's an issue for our projections because we do automated bracketology projections, right?
yeah,
And part of the input to those, well, this needs to change because part of the input is a RPI calculation. I know they've switched to net, but we still use it as part of the model because I think the net, well, A, we don't know how the net is calculated, and B, I think part of the net is a little bit RPI-ish. Anyway, we have an RPI calculation that's part of the bracketology model, but the RPI is bad enough when you have normal schedules, but when there are some conferences that are essentially only playing each other, it's really terrible. Like they're all getting the same opponent. Like it's throwing a wrench in the model. So I had to spend some time like figuring out how to hack around that. I basically just lowered the strength of that and added some bigger weight on our predictive rating and just put some manual boosts in for some conferences that seemed off.
and
But yeah.
and you probably can't even envision the things that you're gonna have to do to adjust your models because they just haven't happened yet. And I don't even know how like I said, you can anticipate certain things, but to what level remains to be seen.
Yeah. And I mean, how's the committee going to treat this stuff too?
Yeah.
Like our model's based on past committee decisions, but who knows what the decisions are going to look like this year when they have, like you said, a team that's only played 13 games, but they've really dominated in those games. Like, would it be possible for that team to get a 1 seed, or are they like, well, you just haven't done enough. There's no way we can put you on a 1 line. I don't know.
Yeah, because I know that the first set of rankings for football came out, and I know the Pac-12 will be lucky to even have a chance if any of their teams are undefeated because they're only playing like 5 or 6 games each. So they're gonna. I'm sure those models are favoring teams that play like at least 9 or 10 games versus somebody who plays 5. So I don't know how that's gonna work for, and again I don't know how they're gonna for teams that only play like are there any major conferences that are only playing within conference?
No, I think it's just 1 or 2 of the smaller ones.
Okay, so
I don't remember off the top of my head which ones, but
I was thinking like in years past, you have a handful of teams every year make the tournament with like a 500 conference record, and if those were the only games that they played, like how's that?
Yeah,
gonna work?
they are playing fewer conference games, so it is
Yeah.
probably going to affect some of those.
So like
mid-tier teams.
the win percentages of these teams are probably going to be I would say a lot lower than average if you're just playing all conference games. So I mean, the looks of it's gonna look a lot different. Are you looking forward to the bubble idea of the NCAA tournament, like playing all the games in Indy?
I think that's definitely the right move. I mean, the NBA bubble. Well, I don't know how bubbly it's going to be, but yeah, putting everybody in one place so you don't have to travel.
Yeah.
2 weekends in a row to pull it off. the only way that they can like reasonably try to do it. I think. I mean, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I like it from a modeling perspective because then I don't have to worry about travel. Like everybody's in the same place, and you're not like, oh,
Sure.
they're going to be better in the first weekend than the second weekend because they're closer to home. It just simplifies things a little bit
Yeah.
on my end. But I think it. I mean, I think it makes sense as a thing to try.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start. Let's dive a little bit into the actual season itself. We just tipped off like 2 or 3 hours ago, I think, with the first games of the year. And as far as the season itself goes, what are there any particular teams or players or coaches you're most interested in seeing, either from a fan perspective or from a team rankings employee perspective? And how it's going to affect your models.
I mean, obviously, first of all is Kansas, just because I'm a Kansas fan. I
Sure.
grew up in Wichita, so that's my team. I was super bummed last year that the tournament got canceled because they were, consensus best team. Um, I was a little surprised when I started looking at rankings this year, and then did ours that Kansas ended up so high because I feel like just as a fan, I'm like the two, Azubuike and Dotson are gone. Like, oh, they're going to be terrible this year. But I think actually in a normal year, they'd be a little bit lower rated, but the top teams, for whatever reason, just are not quite as. There's no teams that are expected to be dominant this year. Like, there's none of the very top teams are returning a bunch of players and got a stellar recruiting class. So there's no like monster team this year, really. Yeah, I mean, Kansas, obviously. I'm sort of curious what Rick Pitino will do at Iona. Like, I don't really want to watch the games. I just want to find out like the results of Iona and see if he
Sure.
like made a big difference there. We gave them a little bit of boost in the preseason ratings for Pitino, but not a huge one. It was only a couple of points. I'm curious about Iowa. There's a big disagreement there between computer models and the polls on them. I mean, the polls had them top 10, and I don't remember off the top of my head what the actual ranking was, but I think they were outside the top 20 in Torvik and Pomeroy. I should probably actually look at this and not claim something that is wrong.
But there was a
Not
big.
in Pomeroy. It's like 27. Well, this is Torvik's rating before he adjusted over the last week. But
Okay.
anyway, there's a pretty big disconnect there between some of the computers and the public there. And I'm just curious how that will go. And plus, I mean, they're one of those teams that I kind of like as a fan, where they have a great offense and a terrible defense. So it's going to be fun to watch those games. I mean, I like watching Virginia too, actually, because I kind of there were a bunch of good Kansas teams with really good defense 10 years ago, like the national title team and some of the other Bill Self teams. So I kind of grew to like defense, and I even did like a defensive charting project where I like watched every game and every play I would like mark which defensive player got credit for what happened and whether it was good or bad, whatever. I did a project with that for Kansas, and then Luke Wynn of Sports Illustrated contacted me about it, and we did one together for the magazine. So it's the only time I got my name in Sports Illustrated was
Nice.
when I did a defensive charting project. So anyway, point is, I like defense too. So Virginia, I think, is a fun team because it's fun to see the other team so frustrated. Anyway, I like these teams where they're super good on one end of the court and less on the other, and they have the extreme values for things. So Iowa's interesting to me for that reason, and Virginia is the reverse of that, like great defense and projected to be mediocre offense.
Now projected mediocre, like, because I know in years past they've always had like the efficiency in their favor. So are you saying that are the numbers projecting that they're not going to be as efficient?
Yeah, so I don't do offensive and defensive efficiency projections separate, but looking
Okay.
at Pomeroy, he has Virginia projected as the number 1 defense, like always,
Yeah.
and number 76 offense.
Okay.
So it's borderline there. So they're only in the top, they're 15th or something
Okay.
overall. And then Iowa, he has number 2 offense and 72nd defense. So they're
Okay.
both pretty weak on one end for a top team.
Okay. So you mentioned Iowa, and my next question here was relating to buying into the hype surrounding some of these Big Ten teams, and I mentioned this kind of selfishly because I went to Illinois, and I'm still a little pissed off about Bill Self leaving, a little bitter about that, but we ended up going to a final game shortly after he left, anyways. But I digress. So, are you buying into either of their hype?
I remember that. I mean, obviously, I remember that game because I remember a lot of games. But I had a friend who bet on that title game. It was the North Carolina Illinois one, and he lost, so he had to wear an Illinois cheerleading outfit around at work for a day. Yeah. So Illinois. Are we buying into Illinois? Well, let me see. What is the hype? So they're what?
Well, I mean they're I saw some good final. I was actually surprised that they were considered, like, at least in terms of futures. I remember seeing them in the top 10 or 15 in terms of futures, and I don't know if that's really a good way to measure because of how you can't bet like no on those, so it's not like you're just betting. You're just betting on the yes part, so I don't really know how good of a market it is, but
yeah, I mean Iowa was second or third or something in some futures markets, and that seems crazy to me. Illinois being 10th or whatever you said is not that far off from where we have them. We have them 14th. So I was looking at some team comps before the call for Illinois. So when I make my ratings, I have this big spreadsheet that has all the components for all the teams for this year and for the past 15 years or so. So I filter that to get some similar teams. So filter on last year's rating and on the value of the recruiting class and percent of returning production, and find a group of teams that are similar, so I can see how those teams did, right? And sort of to check on that our model's doing okay. If these teams ended up doing way better or worse than what the model says, maybe we're missing something. Anyway, I was looking at comps for Illinois, and they're pretty solid. One of them was actually got a number 1 seed, the 2014-15 Villanova team, although they got upset in the second round. There's the 2015-16 West Virginia team that was was a top 10. Last year's Ohio State team, 2010-11 Washington, which was top 15 or so. When I say top 15, I mean power ratings. So I think they're solid, and they have some potential. Some of their comps did very well. I would be surprised if they're the best team in the country, but I think a top 10 is a reasonable spot for them to end up, and I think our number 14 is fine. It might be a little bit low on them. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm considering where they were before Underwood got here. I'll take it because they were. They were looking pretty bad in the Groch. How do you pronounce his name? Grochi or
I don't know.
The guy who made the Ohio run a few times, they just, I don't know. I don't know if the guy couldn't recruit with Illinois or what, but it was just a big turd of a team for a while, and I'm just glad to have some kind of something to at least look forward to on the weekends and midweek or whatever. Okay, so let's see. The next question I have here is related to based on current or current / available numbers. Are there any futures that you've made or you're considering making? I guess since the season just started, you can't do it right now, but maybe are there any that you actually invested a few coins in?
No, I'm staying away from futures this year. Like we mentioned before, I think there's so much uncertainty in how it's going to play out, and a team's season could get killed because their schedule gets messed up by COVID, or I don't know. I just think it's tough this year, and I think our ratings are probably going to be a little bit less accurate than normal, just because there's going to be probably some weirdness with COVID that we're not. Maybe some teams aren't going to get to practice as much, and their coach and their, that's going to affect some teams more than others. Maybe teams that have been together for a couple of years, it's less of an issue. And I think I didn't put in specific adjustments for that, and so
Okay.
I'm staying away from futures for that reason. But I mean, I did look a little bit at what I would bet, and I think probably West Virginia seemed like a pretty solid one. I mean, we have them at number 6. Pomeroy has them at number 8. Torvik had them. Well, I keep quoting these old Pomeroy and Torvik values because that's what it's in my spreadsheet. I think they updated them.
Okay.
Anyway, they all have them top 10. Torvik had them at 2 earlier. I think they're probably a little lower now. But in the market, they were, I don't know, not close to that.
Okay.
Trying to filter my spreadsheet so I can sort here. Yeah, when I looked last time, they were like, what is that? 15th or 16th, something.
Okay.
Actually, basically all the Big 12 teams. Texas Tech. I mean, Torvik actually had Texas number 1 for a while until Gonzaga.
Oh yeah, that's one of his. That was one of his questions for you. Was relating to why so low on Texas.
Yeah, that's just. I gave him crap earlier in the summer because I looked at his ratings and Texas was number 1, and I was like, I actually thought that it was just an error. So,
so you didn't think anything of it. It kind of like your when you were inputting your values and you still had Furman. You had Furman as like a 4 seed.
Yeah, I thought it was like that. I thought it just wasn't ready yet.
Yeah,
it was the real value. I mean, they're returning a ton of production. Actually, so I mentioned to him last night that I had an interesting comp for them. So in our whole database of 15 whatever years, there's only one other team that had a rating as high as Texas last year and returned 100% of their production, like not 99, but literally 100%. And it was the Butler team that made the final and, lost by Hayward bricking a shot. So the one comp for Texas is pretty good.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe they're better than I think. Although, to be fair, that team was like a 5 seed, so they weren't a dominant team during the season, I guess. So.
Yeah, I lost a lot of money on them in that betting against them in the tournament that year.
Betting against Butler?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm a season better now by any means, but I was definitely a lot less seasoned then, and I was drinking a lot during the times that I was betting, so that doesn't usually help things.
Yeah.
One question I just thought of when we were talking about the futures and how we were talking about the this year probably not being the best most comfortable year to do it. When you are doing this in future years, starting like say next year, are you anticipating a lot of the numbers for this year, or basically just this season in general, to be kind of like ignored, or like, I don't know the right word, but like where you're not weighing this season as much on like comps as you would like other seasons? Like you're not gonna. I'm not anticipating you like in future years saying like, oh yeah, this team is like a 2020 so and so team, like because it just seems like it would be very hard to use this year as a comparison point for any other year. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it depends on how successfully the season goes off.
Yeah,
Like I'm expecting a ton of canceled games, so I don't know if teams have 13 game records, like we're saying. Then yeah, I probably won't be. But if they manage to have 2/3 of their schedule played, I think I'll probably be using it like normal data. The NBA this year is one that I haven't really figured out exactly how I'm gonna treat it, but I mean the bubble is clearly way different than anything else. I probably just try to throw out the bubble games and use regular season data up until that point if I'm doing some kind of thing, or yeah, maybe just throw out the season altogether. But college basketball, I think probably regular season data will be usable. NCAA tournament data, if we're doing some kind of a model with seeding and selection and or tourney advancement or something, yeah, that's probably just going to be thrown out. I mean,
sure. Okay.
yeah,
All right. Now, before we move into the most important topic, the beer topic, I wanted to have you give the chance to provide some of the Twitter follows you recommend for NCAA. Now, it could be obvious, non-obvious. I already know, like, you've already spoken about Pomeroy and Bart. Are there any others besides them that you lean on, or either for their data purposes or just for their fan purposes?
man, I forgot to prep for this question. I know Jordan Sperber is another probably obvious one to people that are listening to this call, but or podcast. But if you're not familiar with Jordan Sperber, that's definitely someone you should be following. He does a good mix of analysis, but also tape,
Okay.
video dissection and stuff. He has like a newsletter that's really good. Um, man, I should have. I really don't have anything
Uh,
prepped yet. I don't know
no,
who to
that's all right.
recommend. Torvik and Pomeroy are the obvious ones. I mean Seth Byrne, who everyone that watches this knows already, for the wins above baseline stuff. Mike James, I think is his name, that used to do IVB ball. I think is pretty solid for some similar stuff. Yeah, he's IVB ball. I don't know. I'll post some recommendations
Sure.
when I
Yeah.
share this.
Yeah. Once we
link.
once we share this, you could give it some more thought and and tag anyone that you recommend that people might want to follow for this season and beyond. Okay, well, let's go into the beer portion here. So, for those that don't know, me and you did a beer exchange recently, and I would say the results of it for both of us were successful in enjoyment levels.
Yeah.
It was much enjoyed. And from my end, I'll start this off because
Okay.
I was, I was anticipating. So you gave me a lot of different styles. You gave me a bunch of sours, a bunch of IPAs, and most of them were from your area. There were some from the West Coast, like the Washington or Oregon areas, I think.
Yeah.
But a
I think there's
lot
one
of them
from
were
Colorado.
California based. A lot of them were based in your area, and I had pretty high expectations for the IPAs, but the sours I think were what caught me off guard. And I don't consider myself like the biggest sour guy, but I feel like the sours that you provided me were on point. I don't know if that's like if your area is if the sours are well known in your area, or if it's like or if maybe you just gave me a good batch there.
Oh, I think the sours I sent were mostly. I guess there was a Cascade, which is Oregon, right? There's a Logsdon, which is also Oregon, or maybe Washington. There was a Black Project, which is Colorado. I can't remember what else. Was there any other one in there?
Yeah.
Anyway, point is, I don't think San Diego's not a sour
Okay.
town at all. It's
Okay.
an
So
IPA town.
so I didn't really I didn't yeah I guess I didn't pay close attention to like where they actually came from. So you might have just picked some out from different areas that weren't like
Yeah, I was
maybe
trying to get stuff, just whatever the criteria. I wanted to put some classic San Diego stuff in there, so that's why
yeah
the pupil and the duet are in there. But yeah, I was just going for stuff that I didn't think you'd be able to get in Chicago that I
sure.
thought was good. Like, make a nice variety there.
So yeah, so I was gonna say so that's what actually caught me off guard the most. I don't I'm looking through that the IPAs were obviously right on point. Out of the ones that you gave me, out of the IPAs that you gave me, are any of those considered like your favorite IPA, or is there like an IPA that like that you might give me in a future package that would be considered like your favorite from the area?
I mean, I think Alpine Duet is probably my favorite flagship go-to thing from here.
Okay.
It used to, so Alpine got bought by Green Flash, like I don't know when it was, 5 years ago or something, and they started bottling it and canning it in a different place, and it's I don't know if it's just my perception of it or if it's actually changed. I think it's not as good as it used to be. It used to be like my favorite beer in the world. Maybe my tastes have just changed, but I
Okay.
think it's good now, and I think it's a great go-to flagship thing for the area. Um, I'm trying to remember what else I gave you.
Yeah, I
So
have.
for the most part, I've gotten into this habit where I'm drinking new things all the time, like
Okay.
whenever special release is coming out. So it's more about breweries that I always like their stuff than about particular beers. I think my favorite thing right now is like Humble Sea, their hazy stuff was like the top. I gave you a couple of Humble Sea, I guess, right? The
Yeah.
what was it? Fog Seeger and
Yeah. Um.
something. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's like my favorite thing right now. There a lot of the hazy stuff I'm kind of getting tired of. My wife is like super over hazies because they're all like just kind of taste like juice. Like they're soft, they're juice,
Yeah.
they're kind of like innocuous. Like they don't taste like beer. I like my beer to have some kind of like aggressive something in it, like
Yeah.
alcohol burn or hop bitterness or maybe herbal notes or something. I'm not a huge fan of just like the soft tropical notes that are all over hazies, but the Humble Sea stuff, when I the good ones from them, well, the texture is different. It feels more like thick and I don't know. They use the marketing term foggy, so that's popping into my head.
Yeah.
But then it has this like really intense hop spiciness. It almost turns into like a numbing sensation at the end of the beer if you have enough of it. I don't know. I'm into them a lot right now.
Okay. Um. Now, in terms of like styles, I know you said you're kind of over the any IPAs, or I don't know, maybe.
I mean, I still like them, but I've
But
found they're always overrated. I think on Untapped, I'll see like, oh wow, this beer is rated really highly. I'm gonna check it out, and then I
yeah,
get it. I'm like, it's fine, whatever.
yeah, but it doesn't like over. It doesn't like blow you away.
Yeah, I actually had the number one rated beer on Untapped recently, Treehouse King Julius, or maybe it's King JJJ. Anyway, whatever. It's from Treehouse. I
Okay.
did a trade with someone from Boston like a month before you, and they sent it, and I was like, "Ooh, excited to try it." And then I had it. I'm like, "It's fine. Like,
Yeah.
it's a good hate, I guess. I don't know why it's the number one beer in the world, but it's good."
Yeah. I'm looking through the Untapped, and By the way, I don't really care for the Untapped on the website. I don't.
Yeah,
It's a
the
lot
app is
easier on the
way
on the app.
the app is way better.
But but yeah, no. I'm looking through all the like what I gave the ratings, and I feel like my top three might have been all sours, or there might have been some that I put like the IPAs are really good, but yeah, I
Well, that
think
one How'd you like the Petch and Brett? Was that in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
top
that
three?
was
That
yeah
I
that
think might be my favorite beer that I sent you. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that's a
yeah
really nice thing.
yeah and I know you said you didn't mean to leave the price tags on, but like when I looked at it, I was like, I wouldn't even spend this much money on myself normally. Like I
Yeah,
think
I
like the
yeah.
most I've ever actually spent on a single beer was the Flossmoor. I gave you some Flossmoor Station. They make a barley wine beer, Wooden Hell, every year, and barley. I realize barley wine is not for me. So it gets high ratings and people love it, aged and all that stuff. But you know, I feel like you have to have certain taste buds for it, and I don't
Yeah.
have those taste buds. I don't know if you have any beer like that that's like considered like highly rated that your maybe taste buds don't agree with, but that's
I'm
like
hit
one
and
of
miss
mine.
with barley wine. I sometimes I don't consistently like them as much as other people seem
Yeah,
to, but some of them I think are really good, and some of them just don't do it for me. I mean, well, like hazies, I guess I was saying I'm
yeah,
over a little bit, but really just any of the German beers, any lager stuff. I don't know, something about the lager, that signature lager flavor is just not something I enjoy very much. So I
sure.
kind of stay away from German stuff. The opposite though, um, something that I love, all the like every one that I ever have, even if it's low rated, I love is like wee heavies and Scotch ales.
Okay.
Those really, I don't know what it is. It's like the malty sweet flavor in there or something.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I've had a couple of those this year from Founders. I don't know if you've had any Founders,
yeah, Pounders is really good.
but yeah. Yeah, let me go back here to the outline. So I guess I'll turn the question on you. Is in terms of the beers that I sent over your way, were there any ones that like caught you off guard that you're like, oh, this was better than I was anticipating, or like anything like that?
Um, so that Hemo Goblin from Rabid was a
Yeah,
lot better than I expected. It's a chocolate blood orange wheat ale, which to, when I read that, I'm like,
that combination's pretty unique. I feel like.
yeah. But I mean, in general, I'm not a huge fan of wheat beers. I feel like they're often just kind of too light for me, and they're a lot of times targeted at a different audience that wants to just have a nice relaxing drink, and it's not like I'm like looking for the flavor notes and stuff, and they're oftentimes more simple. Anyway,
Yeah,
wheat ales I'm not big on. Right, chocolate orange in a wheat just sounds like it's going to be a sugar bomb or something, or
yeah,
really really weird. But it was good. It was kind of crisp, and I think the blood orange. I didn't really think about it until I tasted it. That the blood orange had a nice adds a nice like tart bitterness to it. I was just thinking of regular orange, but blood orange is a little bit different. And I think if it was a normal, like if they used tangerine or something in blood instead of blood orange, it wouldn't have worked as well. But the blood
yeah.
orange, I thought, was a nice touch with that. And then the chocolate wasn't. I was afraid it was going to be like over the top and really weird, but it was just sort of it smelled chocolatey. But then the chocolate didn't come through a ton until you drank it a bit, and it just sort of like your mouth just tasted like you've been eating a little bit of chocolate. It was more like a just sensation as opposed to like a obvious flavor, which I think was good for that beer.
And I don't know if you actually caught it, but I had them on in like a one-off podcast back in April.
Mm-mm.
The owners from Rabid, and
Oh no, I didn't.
so I actually messaged them your review, and I guess I probably should have edited it because like you said, like surprisingly good, like because it makes them sound like you were anticipating it to be terrible, but like
Well, I didn't anticipate it to be terrible because of who brewed it, though.
yeah,
So it's not
yeah,
a insult to
like
Rabbit.
you
It's
said,
just
just
the style.
the
Yeah,
style of it, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, they're the ones that are closest in proximity to where I live. They just started up like 3 years ago, so And they just started canning, so that this was like actually like one of the first opportunities that we even had to, like, I would have even had to send people their beer. So I was really happy
Nice.
to do that.
Did you say you know them outside of,
Well, I
like,
only
you
knew,
already knew them,
I
or you
met
just
them.
know them because you
I
go there
met them.
so much?
I met them because of
Oh,
where
okay.
they're based, but we also found out they live like a half a mile from us. Not that we've gone to hang out with them, but just supporting anybody in your community. I feel like at this time especially is very important.
Yes, that's why I'm drinking beer. It's just to
And
support people.
yeah, that's the only reason why. That it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with anything else. So, in terms of the previous exchanges that you've done, I know you mentioned Boston, but in terms of other exchanges you've done, are there any cities or regions you could see yourself like moving to strictly for the beer? Like, I know I'm obviously you have a family, but like in a utopia where you could just pick up and move wherever you could because of beer. Are there particular areas of the country, either because of exchanges you've done or just beer that that is good, that you'd be like, hey, I'd really love it here, really love to move there?
I think. I mean, I think San Diego's pretty solid for beer, actually. So, I
Yeah,
I wouldn't be aching to move away. But
yeah. And if I'm
oh,
not
grab a beer.
mistaken, as I say, if I'm not mistaken, you were kind of caught off guard based on the how good the beer scene was in San Diego when you moved there, right?
Yeah, I didn't really know that much about it before I moved. I wasn't quite as into it at that time. But yeah, my wife got a job here. Well, she wasn't my wife at that time. Anyway, whatever. She got a job here, and I moved without ever visiting, just um, having read up on it a little bit, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I knew the weather was going to be awesome. I didn't realize the beer scene was so good. That was a nice surprise. There was actually a brewery called Hess Brewing that had their grand opening like
Oh,
the month after I arrived. I was like, oh, they're welcoming me. This is awesome. But yeah, I guess if I have to pick another place, maybe Portland.
okay.
That would be solid. I mean, they have that Cascade is there. That I sent you one of theirs. I'm drawing a blank on what else was up there, but I mean, I imagine you'd get a lot of Logston and um, a lot of sours. They have some good like they kind of a while ago they had a bunch of Cascadian dark ales, like hoppy dark black IPAs that I really like. I don't know if many of them are still being produced, but I get the impression it's a solid area for beer. I feel like everywhere is becoming pretty good now. Most big cities, I think, probably have some solid local breweries. Like
Yeah,
Chicago, I didn't know anything about Chicago before this trade, but I mean, some of the stuff I got was really good. The Full Nation. Wait, that's
and
not
that's
the right one.
actually I don't even think that's that Full Nation. I want to say is different. I don't know if that was actually in Chicago. I think you.
Oh,
I
you're
think,
right. It's not. It's
yeah.
Williamston, Michigan. Well, anyway, it's something that I wouldn't be
Oh,
able to get.
Old Nation. Yeah, Old Nation.
Oh, Untapped is down. Oh no!
Um,
How am I
but
going to finish this?
but yeah, the
Yeah, and Hot Butcher was awesome. That megabyte. That
yeah.
was my favorite one in the package.
Okay, okay, yeah.
That reminded me a lot of the Humble Sea stuff that I like.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
similar feel and a little bit of the numbing.
Yeah, they have a new beer out every week, and on the beer page on Facebook, that's like the beer that people are always seeming to get. And like, obviously, that leads to people considering it overrated, which you're gonna get that once a brewery becomes popular enough, you're gonna get your share of people that say it's overrated. Which, hey, everyone has their own different tastes, but for the most part, I've liked most of their beers, and I think I sent you an article that had I don't even know if how reputable the rankings article that I gave you was, but they had like a beer that was like considered like top 10 or 15 by somebody, so it's like but yeah. But yeah, as far as my areas go, like the exchanges that I've done, I'm San Diego is one I wanted to get, and I think I'm gonna do another San Diego one with another buddy of mine who lives down there, and he has some of his favorite breweries down there. So I'll probably get a little bit more of a taste there. I actually just reached out to John Nissan, who was on a previous podcast for Vegas beers, because he's always posting stuff from his Instagram. And some of them look really tasty. So
when I've gone to Vegas, I guess it's been a few years, but I tried to find some good craft beer there. It seemed like it was. I know I just said every city has some good breweries, but I thought I had a little bit of a problem finding. Well, but actually, I was probably trying to find one that was really near the Strip. I probably was not.
Yeah, and I don't even. I'd have to talk to him about it, but I don't know if the beers that he posts are actually from the area or not. So I'd have to clarify that with him. But I put out a feeler for him, and yeah. So anyone who's listening to this, by the way, if we get to talking and you want to do an exchange with me, I'm cool with that because I'm looking for, there's probably different areas of the country that I'm not familiar with your style of beer, and San Diego I was kind of familiar with. The West Coast IPAs are what I had in mind when we were doing the exchange. So I had higher expectations for those than the other ones. So yeah. I as far as other styles go, I guess I'm not as seasoned enough, but I do know that I love the Midwest for where we are in terms of distribution. We're right in the center of the country, so it makes it a lot easier for places to come to us as opposed to like going across the country. Like Chicago's a nice halfway point for a lot of the different coasts to like, hey, give us your beer, like, and so I feel like we get a lot of good beer to begin with, but I'm sure there's some areas, and like you said, I think I have my wife's uncle they live in Vancouver, Washington, so that's not too far away from Portland. So that might be somebody that I have to reach out to for beer because I've heard good things about their beer as well from him. So as far as the label of being a beer snob, do you consider yourself a beer snob? Does that phrase bother you at all?
I mean, I think the way people use it, I have to be one. Like, I'm buying sort of expensive beers for myself to drink and take tasting notes on them and everything. So clearly, I am. But I mean, at the same time, if I go to someone's house, well, I'm not going to people's houses now, but next year, if I go to someone's house and they hand me a Coors Light, I'm not going to be like, oh, I don't want this. I'll take a Coors Light. I'm a beer snob, but I'm not actually. I try not to be snobby about it. I probably am more than I think I am, but I mean, I think it's a fine label. I don't think anyone. Well, no one's used it to my face in an insulting way. It's more like, oh, there goes Dave again with his chocolate blood orange wheat ales.
So do you? Jokingly. So like, in your social group, are you the exception in terms of like drinking like craft beers, or are you like actually like, or is your group kind of mirror you there? There's a kind of. I mean, it's probably a mix. I'm guessing, but
yeah, it's a bit of a mix, but I'm at the extreme end of it. I mean, I think in San Diego, a lot of people are at least a little bit knowledgeable about it because it's kind of like you live in Napa, you have to drink some wine. Like, it's not quite that level, but like, you go to a random restaurant and the beer on the menu is craft beer. They're like, unless it's like I basically rarely go to restaurants that don't have some solid local craft beers on the menu. So
sure.
I think everyone I hang out with at least appreciates them a little bit. Not everyone, obviously, but it's pretty standard thing here to be a little into it. Not like I am, where they're. I don't think I have any. Well, I have a couple friends that are same level as me that do beer trades and stuff, but
okay,
not in my super close circle of friends.
Got it. Yeah, and actually, when you mentioned that for some reason it triggered like my thought process of like going to breweries recently. I feel like maybe more so since the Rabbit opened, where I could go outside and hang out in their field, especially this year because there was no inside drinking. But I feel like the average age of somebody who's into this has maybe gone up a little bit because I feel like I see people like maybe not necessarily my parents' age, but like maybe halfway between my age and my parents' age that are like very much into this hobby.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. It's been around for a while now. I don't know if like I got into it when I was in my probably mid 20s. I wonder if I was that age now, would I be getting into craft beer or would it be more like hard kombucha
Yeah,
or like craft cocktails or tiki bars or
yeah,
something?
yeah,
I do think it's not like the cool thing anymore is my impression. But also, I mean, 10 years ago, now we go to breweries and hang out with friends and bring our kids and like they run around
yeah.
outside, it's like a family thing outside. We're hanging out outdoors, there's little games and stuff. That didn't happen 10 years ago because the people that were super into craft beer were there weren't as many people that got into it 10 years prior that had kids so that were bringing them to the brewery and stuff. So I think it just got it's the old customers are aging and then the new ones are probably not getting into it as much, so the blend is changing. But yeah, it's a very common social thing here too, is again, not right now, but it's
Yeah,
good for us with kids. It's a good, like, it's a lot easier to bring our kids to a brewery and hang out outside there as opposed to going to a crowded bar or
sure.
something like that.
So I know you were mentioning the California laws. Are they allowing for outdoor drinking right now, or
Yeah, right now, well, no, you can't just go drink. You have to buy food
oh
if you're drinking. So, and it has to be outdoors right now, at least in
yeah,
San Diego. I think it varies based on, well, actually, I don't know if it varies right now or if they just put in a strict order across the whole state. But basically, yeah, you can go sit outside in a small group if you order food with your beer.
got it.
I haven't done that. I actually haven't eaten at a restaurant or drank at a brewery or bar since March. So
Okay,
we've been doing a ton of takeout. I've been buying more stuff from bottle shops to drink at home, drink in my backyard. Um, we've been going to friends' houses and hanging out in their yard. San Diego's nice because it's you can go outside and hang out all times of the year.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we're still you know I don't mean to
No,
rub
no,
it in.
it's no. I'm trying to anticipate the next time I'll feel comfortable with that because I know that I had a friend invite me over to his place last week and I happened to be busy, but like unless we're like unless he's opening the garage, and we sit in the garage, like I don't know how I'm not very everyone has their own comfort levels with this, and I'm not here to debate that, but living where we live, yeah, I just anticipate drinking by myself for the next like 4 months. So,
Yeah, I would not go to hang out in someone's house to drink right now because
oh,
you're masked off in an enclosed area. Like that's the enclosed area is I think the big thing. Outside, sitting 15 feet apart from each other,
yeah,
yeah, you're fine. And
yeah,
so
but
we've done some of
but
that.
yeah,
I
to
think
each their own.
also
But
having kids makes a difference too. Like the kids need contact more
oh,
than we do.
sure,
To
yeah,
go
yeah,
together.
the friends that I hang out with the most are the ones that don't have the kids, kind of like us. So, but there have been some creative ones. That one of the beers that I gave you, Floss Mersation, they're actually like I think they bought some like igloo sort of things, so that they could still do outside because they banned the indoor. So like, I think in order to qualify, you still have to have some kind of opening or something like that. So like, they're doing some kind of igloo thing, and I know that they're renting space by their fire pit outside where you could sit out there for an hour and a half, and it's like a deposit to sit there, but the deposit goes towards your bill, so it's not like You know,
Oh, uh-huh.
so it's like, so it's just a lot of creative ways that you have to come up with to stay alive right now. It's not fun for anybody, but I am. It is interesting to see how certain businesses adjust to it compared to others. I will say that.
Hmm. Yeah, it is kind of neat. There's a bar near us that's a craft beer bar that I used to go to a lot and will once this thing is over. And they started doing a thing where they provide the ingredients for a meal and then a video, like there's a live stream of a cooking class with a chef that's at the place, and then they have beer pairings that go with it.
Okay.
Or you can just have them cook it and then you still get to watch and drink the beer with people. But there's just stuff like that, like little random ways to add some income that are
Yeah.
kind of creative. Which, I
Yeah.
mean, it sucks that they have to do it, but it is interesting seeing the stuff that people come up with.
Seeing how creative they can get, for sure.
There's a lot of like meal kits from places like the Thai place near us sells meal kits now that you can take home and cook yourself. And
Yeah.
we did several beer pairing dinners recently, which were they deliver the food with the heating instructions and the beers, and then there's like a video that you watch of the brewer walking you through, like, this goes with this because of this, and
Yeah.
you know that was fun. I thought that was a still being able to do beer pairing dinners is nice. Actually, I enjoyed those probably more than a real one because I get to hang out in my backyard and
Sure.
relax and
Sure.
take it at my own pace.
Sure.
So hopefully they'll keep doing that when this is over.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, it's showing what level of business creativity you can come up with, because the smaller businesses are the ones that are hurting the most. I don't think there's any question about that. Um, so yeah, good. I mean, I'm glad to hear that that places like that are doing that to keep you interested and keep themselves afloat for now.
Mhm.
Um, all right, let's go into some of the listener questions here. I know we've probably touched base on some of these already, but the amateur b-ball was asking about thoughts on Missouri Valley Conference this year, specifically Valpo.
Yeah. Okay. So I looked up that conference. I don't know much about it off the top of my head. I used to be more into it because, like I said, I grew up in Wichita, and Wichita State used to be in the Missouri Valley, so I used to follow it closely. But haven't as much recently. But I mean, it looks like it's basically a two-team race with Loyola and Northern Iowa. Um, I looked up some comps for both of those before the show, and the comps actually seem to be a little better than our prediction for both of them. So I think they might be a little bit underrated. Loyola's profile, they had an above average rating last year. They don't have any recruits. Like, I mean, they have recruits, but not ones that get value in our recruiting model, right? Just standard recruits, basically.
Yeah,
No players lost the draft, no transfers, but they're returning over 90% of their uh, production, which is a lot. Based on their like 8 or 10 comps that I found, we'd probably have them more like, I think they average something like 45th ranked, but we have them 60th ranked, so they could be a little bit better.
okay.
Northern Iowa's sort of similar. No valuable recruits, no players lost to the draft, no important transfers. They were a bit better than Loyola last year, but they lost more of their production. It kind of cancels out. And again, with the comps, seemed like they might be a little bit better. Valpo, at first, I was a little surprised they were so low when I glanced at their team page, because it looked like they were returning a lot of players, and that's obviously positive. But I looked closer, and the players that they lost happened to be the most efficient ones. So the production returning is a lot lower than the percent of minutes returning.
Got it.
So outlook for Valpo is not super great. It's a little bit. I think if you're not deep into it and you're just like, oh, we're returning all these players, why aren't they higher? I think that's the explanation. Like the players that they lost happen to be the most efficient ones, and not necessarily. It wasn't like they lost a bunch of stars. It's like the players that are role players but super efficient that maybe you don't realize are so important
Yeah.
to the team. So
Okay. Okay. I think you kind of touched base on both of these Bart ones, and this is one of your recommendations. So for those who aren't familiar with Bart, at totally underscore T underscore bomb, totally underscore T underscore bomb. Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure I said that right. So he had asked about special plans for your ratings to deal with the shortened and crazy schedule, and I think I think you touched base on that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really nothing that the ratings are. I mean, not in terms of schedule. The schedule is more of a pain just for me, like managing the data and
Yeah,
handling all the changes and stuff. But that doesn't really affect the ratings
yeah,
themselves.
and and like you said, it might not be as solid of a baseline to use for future years if you're doing the
Oh,
comps.
I guess I didn't think of it. He might be. His point might be that there's fewer non-conference games, so teams aren't as well connected. So, usually the non-conference is how you figure out how the different conferences compare to each other, and then there's once the conference season starts, there's more sorting within the conference, but the overall conference rating doesn't usually change very much, at least based on how we make the ratings, right? It's sort of
Okay.
a zero-sum game. So with less conference games, um, I forget the numbers. I showed numbers. I pulled the data for this earlier, but it's something like I think there's like 20% less conference games scheduled this
Okay.
year or something. 20%? No. The more like 50%. Anyway, there's a lot less conference games. It doesn't matter how many. So yeah, teams are not going to be as well connected. But as for what we're doing to handle that, basically hoping that our preseason ratings are good in terms of the level of the conferences. I am planning on sort of taking another look at the ratings. I mean, I'll monitor them all year. I always do, but maybe a deeper look at conference comparisons after we've had the non-conference and see if I think, we might put in some kind of a fudge in the ratings code or something to bump up some conference artificially or something if there's a couple of results that seem to be skewing stuff because one fluke upset normally could be dwarfed by a bunch more normal results, but now if there's only a few non-conference games, it could skew things. So I mean, we'll take a look, but at this point we don't have any concrete plans on a way to handle that other than maybe hack something later if something looks off.
Okay. Okay, and then yeah, you already addressed Texas, and you already had the comp to them of the Butler team that made the. So he was asking about the Texas ranking there. The next.
So actually,
So go ahead.
on the Texas one, yeah, I just had a couple. My notes. I have a couple more comps here. I guess I must have loosened the returning production to be 90% plus or something instead of 100. But I have 2013-14 Providence, who ended up ranked 48, and 2010-11 Florida, who ended up ranked 17th. So it doesn't. I'm not seeing any teams in the comps that look like dominant teams, but they also are pretty unique profile. So there's not a lot of comps. So I don't know.
Okay. The next set of questions here is from Zanbob. I think that's how you pronounce the at here. XANBOB1. Two questions. He had the thoughts on trying to quantify home court with all the variance between conferences and states, and he was wondering if it was best just to have a set number this year. And then he was asking about why so low on Bama. So I don't know which one of those you want to address first.
Yeah. So the home court, I think what he must mean is different states have different rules about whether a crowd can be there and how much
Yeah.
of a crowd. Different teams are handling it differently. Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, we would have probably a different home field advantage for no crowd versus 20% crowd versus 50% crowd, but it's just a lot to try to stay on top of and manage for each team. So we are just doing a flat number. I think that I mean, home field advantage matters, obviously. Like it's an important thing to include in your ratings, but it matters at the margins, right? Like if you're just projecting out the season and teams are playing equal number of home and away, it doesn't really change that much. Individual games, obviously, if you think your edge is a half a point and then you're a half a point off on home court advantage, that matters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think one way to adapt to this is just be a little more strict with your plays. And if you're not sure about home field advantage and it might be an extra half a point and you're not really sure, just chop off those plays that are, move your threshold for playing a half a point further away or something like that. If it's a game, if we're doing a half credit and then this particular team has no fans, so we think home field might be more, for that particular game, just adjust your threshold some. But
sure.
Yeah, I think ideal world it would be different, but it's not something that I'm building into the code this year.
Okay, and then your thoughts on Bama, being so low on Bama?
Yeah, I don't think we're that low. I don't know. I looked up the ratings. Again, these are a few days old, but Pomeroy had them at 46. Torvik had them at 37. They were 25th and 29th in the polls. Then we had them at 45. So, I mean, I guess we're a little bit lower than the polls, but pretty much in line with Pomeroy. I'm not seeing a real big reason. I don't really know why they're up at 25th in whichever poll that was. They were decent last year. They had okay recruits, average amount of returning production. They lost their highest usage player to the NBA. So I don't know. That 45th seems about right to me. I guess it could be a little better, but it doesn't look like a team that's, going to be awesome or anything to me.
Okay. Well,
I wonder if their record last year was a lot better than their rating. Let me see if that's playing a role here.
Okay. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to plug. The beer. So to plug, to go back to our beer conversation, I should plug that the beers that I've been drinking today have been from the Roll Up Connect collection here from the Cleveland area. So,
What you got?
Well, the first one I had was actually funny enough from the Snob Society of Northeast Ohio Brewers, aka Snob. That looks like the most traditional IPA. This one's like the lager. Second one I had was the lager, the cold beer here.
I like that can.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And then I just ran to the fridge to get a third one because I wasn't sure how long this was going to take. So I decided to grab a third one. It's a New England double IPA, extra. So yeah, looking forward to. I was saving these for this particular time and also tomorrow because tomorrow's a good day to get drunk because I'm not going anywhere. So anyways, so did you find the Bama stuff out?
Oh, they were only 16 and 15 last year, so I don't know. They were 16 and 15, lost their best player to the NBA draft. I'm kind of
okay.
I wonder if there's like a transfer that I missed or something.
Well, I mean, you say the other ones had the similar rankings, so either you're all missing or who knows.
Yeah.
But that's the whole. I guess the whole fun of it. I don't know. Somebody's going to be more right than somebody else about it. All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I was bummed with that Gonzaga transfer news because before Pomeroy and Torvik and us, we all had different number ones, so there would be like
so
really
that
interesting into the
so
year,
that
but
yeah,
now we're all on
that
target.
pushed it over the edge to everyone having a
Yeah.
consensus. The so I don't know. I really don't know what to do with this question, but it was an interesting one that I know you were thinking about the Josh Keel 10-1. If you could compare the teams to San Diego IPA, so I can understand the rankings, that would be helpful. I don't know if that means that he doesn't really know much about the teams, but like, I guess you can't do it with every team. But like if you were gonna say Gonzaga as a San Diego IPA, what would Gonzaga be?
Uh, Luckily, that's one of the ones that I came up with last
Okay,
night. I have them as modern times
okay,
because they're kind of newish. They're like a really good brewery that's not like a been around forever, like not a classic one or not a blue blood, right? They're kind of
yeah,
an upstart, cool, good, like really good branding. They're always like changing up the styles that they brew and bringing in new recruits. I don't know. I'm stretching the metaphor a little bit, but
sure,
they're just really nice. I feel like Gonzaga's kind of a cool team, if that makes sense. Just
sure,
like the brand, they're like a little indie upstart team,
yeah,
and Modern Times is they have really nice, good branding, and I guess that's the main thing. New, nice branding. I had a few other ones that
sure,
I worked out.
yeah. Go for it.
Kansas is Stone,
Okay,
um, just because it's sort of the classic older school one. Others are trendier, but they keep putting out good stuff. Um, Baylor is North Park Brewing.
okay,
Um, they're so North Park. They've been around. I don't know, 3 or 4 years or something like that, and they were solid and getting some good reviews, but I never thought they were that great. And then recently, I feel like they've gotten a lot better. Now they're one of the best ones in the city, and I don't know. That's similar to Baylor. Baylor's always pretty good, and this year we actually have them at like a number one seed in our preseason
okay.
rankings. So they're Baylor. Um, I I have Illinois and Iowa listed as pure project because I don't know why they're rated so high. But that's probably better with Alabama after the thing that we just discussed. That's it.
Okay.
That's as far as I got. I got
Oh,
sports.
that's fine. No, that's a lot further than I would have gotten with that. So I reached out to Andy Molitor, known for the podcast with Whale Capper, and he was he wanted he wanted to know, like, resources that that you use for tough to find info. Is there any secret sauce behind that? Like, are there any like deep sources that you use that might not be like obvious, or are you kind of like are you kind of doing scrapes of certain sites?
No, we're sort of a I don't know the right way to phrase it, like a real company for our data. Like we don't cobble together stuff from a bunch of sources and scrapers. Which I mean, there's some stuff that we I guess do like that, but most like all of the core data comes from Grace Note, who used to be Sports Direct. So they're our like
Okay,
official data provider, and we just have they have feeds for a lot of different stuff. Um, you know, box scores and rosters and schedules and odds, and so we just pay Grace Note for money. I mean, there is some stuff that we get from outside of there, like for the office pool products, we use public pick data in our tools because I don't know. I'm sure probably a lot of people watching understand, but if there's two teams in a contest and they both have the same in Survivor and they both have the same win odds and one of them is less popular, it's generally better to take the less popular team, right?
sure.
Because if the other one loses, more people get knocked out, right? So we have public pick data in our tools, and that stuff we scrape from some sites. We have agreements with some sites to provide a feed for us. I'm trying to think. There's some stuff that I compile by hand when I do the rankings in the preseason. Like
Okay,
I go look up the RSCI ratings, but I don't think we have any kind of secret. I mean, Grace Note is where we get most of it. So, you know, I guess the secret is pay for pay for a feed where they'll keep it up to date and they won't change it on you, and they'll keep adding new stuff. So.
Sure. Okay. All right. I have to throw this in there, even though just because he added it last minute. But Mucked Nuts was asking, why isn't Illinois number one? I just have to throw that in there because obligatory Illinois reference there.
They're number one in your heart.
Yeah. No, when that season happened in 2015, or 2005, I should say. I knew that was like given their history, I kind of figured that was going to kind of be a one-off. And maybe they'll do it again, but they're not the type of team that's going to go there every other year, like Duke or like another team. Other teams.
If it's going to happen this year, could be it.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, like I said,
comps, right? They had one of the teams in their comps was the number one seed, so maybe if they the top end of their potential is to be that good.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so Real Stan had a bunch of questions here. First one: which team do you think your ratings are most wrong about? Too high and too low, and why? And I don't know how, if you have opinions on that, or if you're kind of like married to your rankings. But do you have thoughts on that?
I definitely don't think we're right about everything. So I'm fine talking about personal opinions compared to the rankings. But too low. I looked for stuff among the top teams, and I didn't see anything where I thought there was something that looked really suspect to me. I think we might be a little low on Illinois.
Okay.
Just a touch. I don't know. I think Wisconsin, I guess in general, maybe the Big Ten, we seem to be below at least the polls on the Big Ten and the markets by a little bit. So it could be that all of the Big Ten is a little bit underrated in our ratings. Hopefully we'll see, with the results of the first few weeks of games, whether that's the case or not.
Sure.
For overrated, I think I'm a little suspect about Kentucky. They return like nothing. They have I think their percent of returning production was like 5% or something.
Wow.
They're like doing a whole new team. And the last time this happened with Kentucky and Calipari, they didn't have a great season. I don't remember if they missed the tournament or they were just like a low seed, but I think the polls have them as a top 10 team. We have them 15th, and 15th still seems like it could be high to me. I looked up some comps, teams with a similar rating the previous year and a similarly valued recruiting class. And what I found was 2018-19 Kentucky got a 2 seed. That's good. 2014-15 Kentucky was that dominant one that lost to Wisconsin in the title game. 2007-08 USC was a 6 seed, lost in the first round. 2005-06 Kansas was a 4 seed. But all of these teams returned a lot more production than this Kentucky team. So, this is, if they returned several more good players, maybe this mix would be what we expect. But I don't know, with no one coming back, and then with the pandemic, possibly maybe they can't practice as much because of a quarantine or something. Sure. And they're all new players. I could see issues with Kentucky.
Yeah, and going back to the whole state thing, trying to keep on top of all these state laws, of what these teams are limited in what they can do would have to be maddening in terms of they're only allowed to practice X amount of days for X amount of hours, or I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work, but things like that. I just don't see this year being a year that's used as a reference point as a reliable data point
Yeah.
for a lot of comparison points in the future. But again, that's me being a novice. I don't have any data background whatsoever. That's just me,
Well, no,
kind of
I don't have
thinking.
any data background about how pandemics affect things.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
we're all.
I don't think there's any. Yeah, was there even a NCAA tournament back in the Spanish flu era?
I don't
I don't
think
think.
so.
I don't think there's. I
Definitely
don't
not a
think.
64, 68 team one.
I don't, I don't think there's any comparison points there. His next question here, Realist Dan's next question was outcome of the Holy Cross BU 6-game series. It's just hilarious to see 6-game series for.
I thought it was a bug because I hadn't like read the news of the scheduling, and then I went to our site and I saw some team. We have a list of like the easiest and hardest games for
Yeah.
each team, and like 6 of the 8 easiest games were the same team. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I better look this up. And no, it was correct. I'm gonna say Holy Cross sweep.
Oh
6-0.
wow. Okay.
I don't know. I don't think that's a serious question, but now I'm curious.
Yeah.
Wow, Holy Cross. Oh, that's not a good prediction. We have Holy Cross at number 332. So I'm going to reverse that and say BU sweep.
Okay. That's probably sounds like a safer bet. And I think you had his discussion on this next one here, but he had over under 63.5 tourney teams. So basically just projecting whether or not you're going to have your normal tourney. I think if I remember reading your series of tweets right, you were thinking that they might lessen it, but have you changed your thought process on that?
I think the one thing that I'm sure about is that they're going to try to have a tournament no matter what. It's so important to them. Whether it's 64 teams, I don't know. Like they know that the bracket is why everyone watches, right? So I think they're going to do everything they can to get 64. I mean, you could maybe do it with a 48 team bracket and have buys for some teams or something, but at this point, I think I'll bet the over on scheduling a 63.5 team tournament.
Okay.
Whether it's over 63.5 will participate, I don't know. That's tough. I think I'll go. I don't want to bet this one.
Okay.
I'll go over on that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I'll try to push through.
Yeah, because I know we had a similar question on the NFL one with Seth, and somebody asked about the over/under in terms of games that'll be canceled. And I think originally back in April, when a lot less was known about this and other factors weren't really considered, I think there's a very big question mark in terms of whether there'd be a season. But then when you consider like the money aspect of it and like all that, like it made sense that the NFL ended up playing their schedule and trying to adjust around it. But with these guys being amateurs, like I don't know how much that has to do with like how they might handle this any differently than professionals. Okay.
What did Seth say for the? I didn't see.
I think. So the September pod, the preview, he whatever I think the total number of games since there's there's 7 teams in each 7 teams in each conference now. The over/under would be a full season would be 269 games, I think, because it's 256 regular season.
Yeah.
And 13 playoffs. So I think the over/under was. I think he said, if he set the over/under at 268.5, he would bet the over. I think he was saying that they would play every game. If I remember right, I don't remember if he made up that line or if somebody else made up that line, but he had said that he thought all the games would be played. So
I wouldn't have been that confident back then. I don't think.
And that was in September. I guess that was when. Maybe the whole money aspect of NFL trying to do whatever they can to get this season through was kind of dawning maybe in his brain, other people's brains. But Okay, so the last question here from Dan was this year's Cam Reddish. Do you have a projection for that?
Yeah. So what he's asking about there is last year, me and him had a Twitter thread where basically it was me posting every time Cam Reddish had a terribly inefficient shooting night and went like 1 for 10 or whatever, and just like ragging on Cam Reddish's poor shooting
Okay.
all year. So I think what we're looking for is a top prospect. Well, I have a comp of Terrence Clark because he's the second-rated prospect on a blue blood team that has poor efficiency. Like the recruiting stuff that I looked up, like the pros were like athletic and whatever, and the cons were like inefficient player. So I think
Okay.
that's your comp this year. We'll have a Terrence Clark thread of me posting every time Terrence Clark has a poor shooting day.
Okay. Okay. Let me just double check here and make sure that there's no other last minute questions because I haven't had Twitter.
Oh, by the way, he's on Kentucky. That's where Terrence Clark
Okay.
is
Okay.
case.
No problem. All right. Let's see. So it doesn't look like there was any other last minute questions. So I think we're good. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Well, I didn't get to mention a couple of beers that I liked that I
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah,
like
please.
top five or whatever. I think that
Oh yeah. Go for it. Yeah, I guess we did.
yeah.
I didn't. And I didn't personally rank in the beers. I guess my rankings were like surprised on sours, like just pleasantly surprised on the sours. Because I guess I've never considered myself like the biggest sour guy. Like I don't know if I'd put sours in my top three styles. I don't know, but I was pleasantly surprised with how those turned out. So yeah, what were your personal five favorites there?
So the Megabyte was number one. I
Okay.
have Wandering into the Fog Simcoe from Abomination at number
Yeah.
two.
Okay.
Boss Tweed at number three. Full Earth number four, and Alpha King at number five.
Okay. And I think the Brett one was the one that I had to rank the highest. I don't remember the other ones offhand, but I kind of wish I saved that last one that I had, that the cobbler one. I wish I would have saved that for Thanksgiving. That would have been a good
Oh, that one was
Thanksgiving
good,
beer.
yeah.
But yeah, that was
I was
that
pleasantly surprised by that one.
yeah, that one caught me off guard. You know, I don't go out of my way when I go to the store to like buy peaches, whenever they're available. But like the taste of that peach cobbler beer was right on point.
Yeah,
So
that
um,
was abnormal, right?
yeah, okay. Well, Dave, thanks for joining. You can catch him at Audacity of Hoops. Good luck this season with your rankings and all the madness that comes with it. And
Same.
And,
Thanks for having me.
oh yeah, one more thing. What's on the Thanksgiving schedule as far as the Hess household as far as food dishes
Ah.
go? What is there a staple dish?
No.
No.
We're doing pork loin tomorrow instead of
Okay.
turkey. We already had a Thanksgiving meal on Saturday, this last Saturday, with a couple friends in their backyard with the normal
Okay.
stuff, turkey, stuffing, sweet potatoes instead of mashed potatoes, but pretty traditional. The stuffing was made from brioche, which was, I'm not sure if I had brioche stuffing before, but that was really good. It was
Okay.
less dense than a normal one. That was solid.
Nice. Yeah, it's going to be a fairly simple one. I mean, my wife does most of the cooking. Thing is, if I try to do some of the cooking, I feel like she'd just be looking over my shoulder anyway. So a lot of times when that happens, I just end up letting her end up finishing the cooking job anyways, because she's gonna critique. She's gonna critique it more than I'm gonna critique her. So I'm like, yeah, you just handle it. So it's just turkey and ham, and I think cranberry sauce and mashed potatoes, and um, you know, and then yeah, I got like 4 more Cleveland beers that I'll probably save, and then yeah, there's a lot of beer here. So we're not going anywhere. I'm just going to be watching. Well, I guess there's only 2 NFL games now because they moved the Steelers game to Sunday. So.
Oh, okay. I hadn't seen that news yet.
So yeah. So.
When did that happen?
Yeah, just probably right close to when we
Right
started, a
before
little
we got
before
it.
that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, that means I got to do some work.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your loved ones, everyone. Thanks for listening. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you, and catch you guys sometime soon.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Thanks
All right.
for having
Thanks,
me.
man.